Everyday English with John and Ashley, Episode 1. Forgetting someone's name, how to handle it in English. Hello, English learners, and welcome to the very first episode of Everyday English Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Ashley.
And I'll be your co-host for this fun and practical podcast.
We're here to make learning English easy, enjoyable, and most importantly, useful for your everyday life. How are you doing today, John?
I'm feeling great, Ashley. I'm excited to dive into our very first topic, which I think everyone listening can relate to.
Absolutely. Today, we're talking about a situation that's a little bit awkward, but happens to everyone, forgetting someone's name.
Oh yes, that's a classic. We've all been there, right?
Definitely. And by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what to say and do if you ever find yourself in this situation. Plus, you'll learn some great vocabulary and phrases to help you sound natural in English. Let's start by painting a picture. Imagine this. You're walking down the street, and you see someone you met recently at a party, a meeting, or maybe even at work. They wave at you and start walking toward you, smiling. You know you've met them before, but their name has completely slipped your mind.
Oh, that sinking feeling, right? You're scrambling to remember, but nothing's coming to you. What do?
This is exactly the kind of situation we're going to help you navigate today. First, let's listen to a short dialogue where this happens. Pay attention to the words and phrases used.
Dialogue. Hey Anna, how's it going?
Oh, hey Nick. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Do you live around here?
Actually, my office is right around the corner. It was great meeting you last week at the conference. I really enjoyed our conversation about foreign investment.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
You know, I'm in a bit of a hurry, but here's my card. We should definitely meet up again and continue.
Sure, you still have my contact details, right?
You know what? This is really embarrassing, but your name has just slipped my mind. Can you remind me?
Sure, it's Anna Ferris. Don't worry about it. It happens to me all the time. I'm terrible with names, too.
Woo for Nick. Forgetting someone's name can definitely be embarrassing. But Anna handled it really well, didn't she?
And Nick also did a good job being honest about it. That's a key takeaway. It's okay to admit that you've forgotten someone's name.
Vocabulary and phrases.
Now, let's break down the dialogue and highlight some key phrases. These will help you navigate situations like this with confidence.
In a bit of a hurry. This is a polite way to say that you don't have much time. Let's hear it in some example sentences. Can you drive faster? I'm in a bit of a hurry. I can't talk right now. I'm in a bit of a hurry. Sorry, I'll check these files later. I'm in a bit of a hurry.
It's a super useful phrase, and it sounds more natural than just saying, I'm busy.
Contact details. How's it going with the new project? Long time no see. How's it going? Don't forget to visit our website for extra practice exercises and a downloadable transcript of this episode. See you next time on Everyday English.
This refers to the information someone might share to stay in touch, like a phone number, email address, or business card details.
Some examples. Do you have my contact details? Let me give you my contact details so we can stay in touch. I don't think I have your contact details. Could you share them with me?
This is a great idiom to use when you've forgotten something. It's casual, natural, and perfect for situations like the one in the dialogue.
Let's hear some examples. I'm sorry. I forgot to respond to your email. It slipped my mind. I can't believe I forgot our meeting. It must have slipped my mind. Your birthday? Oh no, it completely slipped my mind.
It's a polite way to explain that you forgot something unintentionally.
Fluency Builder. Now it's time to dive deeper into fluency. This segment is all about helping you sound more like a native speaker. How's it going?
Instead of saying, how are you, or how are you doing, you can say, how's it going? It's a casual, friendly way to greet someone.
Example. Hey Sarah, how's it going? How's it going with the new project? Long time no see. How's it going?
This phrase is very common in informal conversations, so give it a try.
Around here. This means near this location. It's useful when you're talking about places nearby.
Examples? Is there a good coffee shop around here? I used to live around here. Do you know if there's a pharmacy around here? Real-life tips and stories. Let's make this even more practical by sharing some real-life tips. John, have you ever forgotten someone's name?
Oh, absolutely. I remember one time I ran into an old coworker at the supermarket. I knew him, but I couldn't remember his name for the life of me.
What did you do?
I used a little trick. I said, "Hey, remind me of your full name. I'm updating my contacts." That way, he didn't feel offended, and I got the information I needed.
That's a smart move. Another tip is to introduce yourself first. For example, "Hi, I'm Ashley. We met at the conference last week." Most of the time, the other person will reintroduce themselves too.
Great idea.
Practice makes perfect. Now it's your turn to practice. We're going to role-play a similar situation. I'll play the person whose name you forgot, and you'll play yourself. Oh, hey there. How's it going? It's great to see you too. Do you remember our conversation about the new restaurant downtown? Sure, no problem. My name's Ashley. Long time no see. How's it going?
Listener questions.
Before we wrap up, let's answer a listener question. This one comes from Maria in Brazil. She asks, "What should I do if I forget someone's name in a formal setting?"
Great question, Maria. In a formal situation, you can say something like, "I'm so sorry. Could you remind me of your name? I'm terrible with names." Most people will appreciate your honesty.
You can also try asking for their business card or saying, "Can you spell your name for me?" That works well too. Final listening practice.
Let's listen to the dialogue one more time, but this time at a slower pace. Focus on understanding every word.
Hey, Anna. How's it going?
Oh, hey, Nick. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Do you live around here?
Actually, my office is right around the corner. It was great meeting you last week at the conference. I really enjoyed our conversation about foreign investment.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
You know, I'm in a bit of a hurry, but here's my card. We should definitely meet up again and continue our discussion.
Sure, you still have my contact details, right?
You know what? This is really embarrassing, but your name has just slipped my mind. Can you remind?
Sure, it's Anna Ferris. Don't worry about it. It happens to me all the time. I'm terrible with names too.
Closing and call to action.
And that's it for today's episode. We hope you found this lesson useful and feel more confident about handling those awkward, forgotten name moments.
Don't forget to visit our website for extra practice exercises and a downloadable transcript of this episode.
And if you have a question or a story to share, leave us a comment or send us an email. See you next time on Everyday English. Hey there, language lovers. Welcome to Quick English Tips, where we tackle those everyday situations that can get a bit awkward. I'm your host, and today we're diving into something that happens to literally everyone, forgetting someone's name. Yikes. You know that moment, right? You're walking down the street, minding your own business, and suddenly someone waves at you. Your brain goes into panic mode because you totally recognize their face, but their name? Complete blank. We've all been there, and let me tell you, it's totally normal. Let's talk about how to handle this situation like a pro. First off, here's what not to do. Don't pretend you remember their name, and definitely don't avoid the situation by running into the nearest shop. Yes, I've done that before, not my proudest moment. Instead, here are some smooth moves you can use. The honest approach. Just be straight up. Say something like, "I'm so sorry, but your name has completely slipped my mind. Could you remind me?" Most people are super understanding because, guess what? They've been in the same situation. The clever tricks. Want to be a bit more subtle? Here are some ninja moves I've picked up. 1. The contact update. "Hey, could you remind me of your full name? I'm updating my phone contacts." 2. The introduction bait. Introduce yourself first. "Hi, I'm your name. We met at last week's party." They'll usually respond with their name. 3. The business card switch. In professional settings, try, "Could I get your card? I'd love to stay in touch." Here's a cool phrase you should definitely add to your vocabulary. "It slipped my mind." It's way more natural than saying, "I forgot," and it kind of implies that it wasn't intentional. Like, "Sorry, your name just slipped my mind." See how much nicer that sounds? Let me share a funny story that happened to me last week. I ran into someone at a coffee shop who I'd met at 3 different parties. 3, and still, their name was just gone. So I used the honest approach, and you know what? They laughed and said they were about to ask me the same thing. We had a good laugh about it, and now I actually remember their name. It's Sarah, by the way. Quick pro tips. When you first meet someone, try to use their name right away in conversation. It helps with memory. If you're really worried about forgetting, try associating their name with something distinctive about them, like John with the cool glasses or Emma who loves cats. In group situations, you can always wait for someone else to use their name. Just be patient. Remember, the most important thing is to stay confident. Everyone forgets names. Even memory champions probably forget names sometimes. It's not the end of the world, and being honest about it usually leads to a better connection with people. Oh, and here's a bonus tip I learned from a friend. If you're in a situation where you need to introduce someone whose name you've forgotten to a third person, you can say something like, "Oh, have you two met?" This often leads to them introducing themselves to each other. That's all for today. Language learners, remember, it's not about never forgetting names. It's about handling it gracefully when you do. Keep practicing these phrases, and you'll be handling these situations like a pro in no time. Until next time, keep learning and don't forget to, well, try not to forget too many names. Catch you in the next episode. Hey there, awesome listeners. Welcome back to Modern Life Hacks, the podcast where we tackle those everyday challenges that make us all go, oh. I'm your host, and today we're diving into something that's probably happened to you this week already, forgetting someone's name. But don't worry, I've got some super cool digital tricks up my sleeve that'll help you handle this like a pro. You know what I'm talking about, right? That moment when you're scrolling through your phone, and someone messages you saying, "Hey, great meeting you at yesterday's conference." And you're sitting there thinking, I remember the conversation, I remember their face, but their name? Complete blank. Been there, done that, and let me tell you, it's totally normal in our crazy busy world. Let me share a funny story with you. Just last week, I was at this huge networking event, and someone walked up to me saying, "Remember me from the startup meetup?" My heart started racing because I absolutely remembered our amazing conversation about a technology, but their name? Poof, gone. But guess what? I used some of the tricks I'm about to share with you, and not only did I recover gracefully, but we ended up having an even better connection than before. So, let's talk about your new best friend in these situations, LinkedIn. Oh my goodness, this platform is literally a lifesaver. But here's the thing, you've got to be smart about how you use it. Let me give you the inside scoop on what I call the quick connection strategy. Picture this. You're at a conference, you meet someone interesting, and instead of trying to memorize their name, which, let's be honest, might not work, you do this, grab your phone, open LinkedIn, and send them a connection request right there and then. But wait, here's the crucial part. Add a personal message like, "Loved our chat about digital marketing trends. Looking forward to continuing our conversation." Boom! Now you've got a digital record of who they are, and you've shown them you value the connection. But I know what some of you are thinking. What if I forgot to connect with them right away? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Let me share some ninja-level moves for what I call digital reconnaissance. Trust me, these are total game changers. First up, company websites. Most companies nowadays have team pages, right? If you remember where someone works but their name is playing hide and seek in your brain, that's your first stop. But here's a pro tip. Don't go crazy with profile viewing on LinkedIn. You know those who viewed your profile notifications? Yeah, you don't want to show up there 15 times in one day. Oh, and speaking of digital tools, let me tell you about this super awkward situation I managed to save using a conference app. There I was, about to introduce two people to each other, and suddenly, blank. Both names just gone. But I quickly opened the conference app, pretended to check my schedule, and smoothly found both their names in the attendee list. Lifesaver. But listen up, because this is important. While all these digital tools are amazing, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Privacy. You've got to be respectful, folks. Just because someone has a social media presence doesn't mean you should go full detective mode on their personal Instagram from 2015. Keep it professional, keep it respectful. Here's a real talk moment. I've made some mistakes in this area that I want you to avoid. Once, I went down such a deep LinkedIn rabbit hole trying to find someone that I accidentally liked their post from 3 years ago. Talk about embarrassing. **** learn from my fails, people. But you know what's really cool about our digital age? We have so many opportunities to strengthen connections, even after those awkward name-forgetting moments. Let me share some of my favorite strategies that have totally saved my professional relationships. First up, what I call the recognition recovery. Once you've figured out someone's name, maybe through one of our ninja techniques, don't just sit on that information. Send them a thoughtful message. Something like, "Hey, their name." That point you made about blockchain technology kept me thinking. Just came across this article that reminded me of our conversation. Personal, professional, and shows you value their insights. And here's a little secret weapon I love: content sharing. See something relevant to a conversation you had? Share it and tag them. It's a perfect way to reinforce that name-face connection in your brain, while also adding value to the relationship. Oh, and I've got to tell you about these amazing new technologies coming up. Have you heard about some of the AI-powered networking tools? Now, I'm not saying we should rely completely on technology, because hello, we're human. But some of these tools are pretty mind-blowing. Just remember to use them as helpers, not crutches. Contemplative pause. You know what's funny? Sometimes I think about how our grandparents probably had little address books with everyone's names written down. Now we have all these digital tools, and we still forget names. ***, but that's okay. It's not about being perfect, it's about handling it gracefully. Before we wrap up, let me give you my top 3 quick tips for never getting stuck in the name game again. 1. Make that LinkedIn connection ASAP. Seriously, do it while they're still standing there. 2. Use your calendar. After meetings, add quick notes about people you met. 3. Don't be afraid to admit when you've forgotten a name. Trust me, people respect honesty. All right, amazing listeners, that's all for today's episode. Remember, we're all human. We all forget names, but now you've got some super cool digital tools in your pocket to handle it like a pro. If you've got any funny stories about forgetting names or some tricks of your own, drop them in the comments on our website or shoot us a message on social media. You know, those platforms we've been talking about. Until next time, keep connecting, keep networking, and don't forget to, well, try not to forget too many names. This is your host, signing off. Catch you in the next episode. Cultural Perspectives on Name Memory, a Global Journey. Hey there, name adventurers. Welcome back to Global Connection, where we explore the fascinating world of human interaction. I'm your host, and today we're diving into something super interesting: how different cultures around the world handle the whole name game. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll never look at names the same way again. You know how awkward it feels when you forget someone's name, right? Well, guess what? That feeling is pretty much universal, but how people deal with it? That's where things get really interesting. Let me tell you a funny story that happened to me last month when I was having dinner at this amazing Korean restaurant. So there I was, trying to pronounce my server's name, and I completely butchered it. But instead of getting offended, she smiled and shared this beautiful story about what her name means in Korean culture. It was this incredible moment that made me realize how much we can learn about each other just through our names. Let's start our global journey, shall we? First stop, Japan. Oh my goodness, guys, the Japanese have this fascinating system of name suffixes, san, kun, chan, sama, and each one carries its own level of respect and familiarity. Here's something wild. In Japanese business culture, it's actually considered more polite to use someone's last name with the appropriate suffix than their first name. Can you imagine walking into a meeting and calling your boss Smith-san instead of John? That's exactly what happens in Japan. But here's the really cool part about Japanese business culture. They totally get that foreigners might struggle with names. They often have business cards ready to go, and there's this whole ceremonial way of exchanging them. It's called meishi kuken, and it's like a mini ritual that actually helps you remember names better. How cool is that? Now, let me take you to India, where things get even more interesting. Did you know that in many parts of India, people might have different names for different contexts? I'm not kidding. Someone might have an official name on their documents, a nickname at home, and another name they use professionally. Talk about keeping you on your toes. I remember this one time at an international conference. I met this wonderful woman from Mumbai. She told me, at home, everyone calls me Pinky, at work I'm Dr. Sharma, and my official documents say Priyanka. I was like, how do you keep track? And she just laughed and said, it's all about context. Let's hop over to the Middle East for a second, because this is fascinating. In many Arab cultures, there's this beautiful tradition of using something called a kunya. It's like a respectful nickname based on your oldest child's name. So if your oldest son is named Mohammed, you might be called Abu Mohammed, father of Muhammad, or Mohammed, mother of Mohammed. How beautiful is that? But here's where it gets really interesting for our international friends trying to navigate Western business culture. In the West, we're pretty casual with names, right? Like within 5 minutes of meeting someone, we're usually on a first-name basis. But that can feel super uncomfortable for people from more formal cultures. Let me share some real quick tips for international business meetings that I've learned the hard way. First up, always ask how someone would prefer to be addressed. You might think you're being friendly by using their first name, but in some cultures, that's like walking into a formal dinner in your pajamas. Second, if someone has a name you're not sure how to pronounce, just ask. I promise it's less awkward than spending the whole meeting calling them the wrong thing. I have this friend from Thailand who told me she actually appreciates when people ask about her name because it shows they care about getting it right. Oh, and let me tell you about this amazing tradition in Chinese culture. Many Chinese people choose an English name for international business interactions. But here's the cool part. These names often have really thoughtful meanings behind them. I once met a businessman who chose the name Bridge because he wanted to build connections between cultures. How awesome is that? But you want to know what really blows my mind? In some African cultures, names aren't just labels. They're literally full sentences that tell a story. I had this incredible conversation with a colleague from Ghana who told me his name actually means born on a Tuesday during harvest season. Every time someone says his name, they're telling his story. Mind blown. Let's talk about some practical stuff for a minute. How do you handle multicultural name situations without feeling like you're walking through a minefield? I've got some tried and true tips for you. First, keep a digital notebook. When you meet someone from a different culture, jot down not just their name, but how they pronounced it and any story they shared about it. Trust me, people love when you remember the meaning behind their name. Second, if you're going into an international meeting, do a quick Google search about naming conventions in that culture. It takes like 5 minutes, but can save you from some seriously awkward moments. Oh, speaking of awkward moments, let me tell you about this app I just discovered that helps you pronounce names from different cultures. It's like having a pocket cultural ambassador. But remember, technology is great, but nothing beats actually asking someone about their name and showing genuine interest. You know what I find really beautiful about all this? Names are like little windows into different cultures. Every time we learn about how another culture approaches names, we're not just learning about what to call people, we're learning about their values, their history, their whole way of seeing the world. Before we wrap up, let me share one last story that really brings this home. Last year, I was at this international business conference, and there was this moment where everyone was struggling with names from different cultures. Instead of getting stressed about it, someone suggested we all share the stories behind our names. What started as a formal networking event turned into this amazing 2-hour session of people sharing their cultural traditions, family histories, and personal stories, all because of names. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it? Names aren't just labels. They're stories, they're traditions, they're bridges between cultures. Next time you meet someone from a different culture, don't just ask their name, ask about their name. Trust me, you'll be amazed at what you learn. All right, amazing listeners, that's all for today's cultural journey. Remember, every name is a story waiting to be told, and every awkward name moment is an opportunity to learn something new about our amazing world. If you've got any cool stories about names from your culture or funny cross-cultural name situations, drop them in the comments below or shoot us a message on social media. I love hearing from you guys. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep learning about the amazing stories behind the names. This is your Cultural Explorer, signing off. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the fascinating world of human connection. The memory games. Why new language words play hide and seek in our brains. Hey there, language explorers. Welcome back to Mind Matters. I'm your host, and today we're diving into something that drives every language learner absolutely crazy. Why those new vocabulary words seem to just vanish from our brains the moment we need them. You know that feeling, right? You've spent hours practicing a word, you know it, but when you're actually talking to someone in your target language, poof, it's gone. Well, today we're going to unpack exactly why this happens and, more importantly, how to make those words stick around. Let me share something that happened to me last week. I was trying to order coffee in Spanish, something I've done literally hundreds of times, and suddenly I couldn't remember the word for without. Sin, such a simple word, but in that moment, complete blank. And you know what? There's actually a fascinating scientific reason for this. Let's dive into what's actually happening in your brain when you learn a new word. It's like building a house, but instead of bricks and mortar, you're using neurons and connections. When you first learn a word, let's say gato, that's cat in Spanish, your brain doesn't just store the word, it creates this entire network of connections. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. Your brain links the sound of gato to the meaning, cat, to the image of a cat, to the feeling you have about cats, to the English word cat, and even to similar sounding words you already know. That's a lot of work for one little word, right? But here's the really interesting part. When you're learning in a classroom or using your language app, you're in what scientists call a low-stress environment. Your brain is calm, focused, and making all these nice, strong connections. But when you're actually trying to use the language in real life, that's when stress kicks in. And guess what stress does to our memory? It's like throwing a blanket over all those carefully organized filing cabinets in your brain. The information is still there, but suddenly you can't find anything. This is why you might blank on simple words during conversation, but remember them perfectly when you're relaxed at home. Now, let me share something really fascinating about how our brains process new languages. Did you know that your brain actually stores different languages in slightly different areas? It's like having separate apartments for each language in your mind building. And sometimes, the elevator between these apartments gets a little stuck. But here's where it gets really interesting and kind of encouraging. Every time you try to remember a word, even if you don't succeed, you're actually strengthening those neural pathways. It's like creating a little walking trail in your brain. The more you walk it, the clearer the path becomes. So now that we know why we forget, let's talk about how to make these words stick. I've got some science-backed strategies that have been game changers for my own language learning. 1. The context kingdom method. Instead of learning isolated words, create mini stories or situations. Your brain loves context. Don't just memorize la mesa, table in Spanish. Imagine a whole scene. I'm drinking coffee at la mesa while reading a book. 2. The emotion connection. Our brains remember things better when there's emotion involved. Make it funny, make it dramatic. I once learned the German word Schmetterling, butterflies, by imagining tiny butterflies having a wrestling match. Ridiculous? Yes, but I've never forgotten it. 3. The physical link. Move your body while learning. Create gestures for words, act them out. When you connect a physical movement to a word, you're creating multiple memory pathways. It's like giving your brain extra hooks to hang that word on. But here's the real secret sauce, something I call the memory momentum method. It's all about timing your review sessions perfectly. Instead of cramming, space out your practice. First review, 1 hour after learning. Second review, 24 hours later. Third review, 1 week later. Fourth review, 1 month later. Let me explain why this works so well. Your brain is like a muscle. It needs the right balance of exercise and rest to grow stronger. When you space out your reviews like this, you're catching the information right at the point where you're starting to forget it. And that's the perfect moment to strengthen those connections. Oh, and here's something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. Sleep is absolutely crucial for language learning. When you sleep, your brain actually replays the day's learning and strengthens those new connections. It's like your brain's personal editing room. Let's talk about some practical daily habits that can make a huge difference. 1. The morning mini review. Start your day with a quick 5-minute review of yesterday's words. Your brain is fresh, and this helps cement those overnight connections. 2. The immersion moments. Create little pockets of immersion throughout your day. Label things in your house, change your phone language, talk to yourself while doing chores. Yes, I totally have conversations with myself in Spanish while doing dishes. 3. The connection collection. Make it a habit to connect new words with words you already know. Learning biblioteca, library, connect it to libro, book, and teca, collection. Building these word families helps your brain create stronger memory networks. And here's my favorite trick, what I call the forgetting permission slip. Instead of getting frustrated when you forget a word, celebrate it. Why? Because now you get to learn it again, and each time you relearn something, those connections get stronger. It's like your brain's way of doing extra credit work. Let me share a personal story that really drives this home. I was learning Japanese, and I kept forgetting the word tsukurita, tired. No matter what I did, it wouldn't stick. Then one day, I was actually exhausted, lying on my couch, and I thought, I am so tsukurita right now. And you know what? I've never forgotten that word since. Why? Because I learned it when I was experiencing the actual feeling. This brings us to something really important, authenticity in learning. Your brain remembers things better when they're meaningful to you. So instead of memorizing random vocabulary lists, focus on words you actually want to use. Are you a food lover? Learn food vocabulary. Love sports? Start there. Before we finish, let me leave you with this encouraging thought. Every single time you try to recall a word, whether you succeed or not, you're building stronger connections in your brain. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways to become a better language learner. So next time you forget a word, remember, it's not disappearing, it's just playing hide and seek with your brain. And with these strategies, you're getting better at finding it every single time. That's all for today's deep dive into the psychology of language learning. If you've got any cool memory tricks or funny language learning stories, share them in the comments or on our social media. And remember, every forgotten word is just an opportunity to create an even stronger memory. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep being patient with your amazing, word-collecting brain. This is your Language Psychology Explorer, signing off. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next week for more adventures in understanding how our minds master languages.
Starting out, the language learning mindset. Hey there, and welcome to Fluency First Steps, the podcast where we dive into the tips, tricks, and little secrets to learning a new language without losing your mind. I'm Ashley, your host and fellow language enthusiast. If you've ever dreamed of ordering croissants in Paris like a pro, or chatting with locals on a trip to Japan, you're in the right place. So, here's the big question I want to start with today. What's stopping you from learning a new language? Take a second. Think about it. Maybe you're saying to yourself, I don't have time, or I'm too old, or even, I've tried before and it didn't stick. Sound familiar? I get it. I've been there too. But here's the good news. None of those things have to hold you back. Today, we're talking about mindset because honestly, that's where everything begins. Before we get into grammar rules, vocab apps, or pronunciation hacks, we need to set you up with a mindset that'll carry you through the ups and downs of learning a language. Trust me, this is the secret sauce. Alright, let's jump in. Step 1. Forget perfection. Here's the deal. Learning a language is messy. You're going to make mistakes, lots of them. You'll mix up words, pronounce things wrong, and probably say a few hilarious things by accident. And guess what? That's exactly how you learn. I'll share a quick story. When I was learning Spanish, I wanted to say, I'm embarrassed, but instead I told someone, estoy embarazada, which actually means, I'm pregnant. Yeah, talk about awkward. But you know what? That moment stuck with me. Now I'll never forget the word avergonzado for embarrassed. So, here's your first mantra. Mistakes are my best teachers. Say it out loud. Own it. Step 2. Small wins matter. When you're learning a language, it's easy to get caught up in the big picture. You dream of fluency, having deep, meaningful conversations, watching movies without subtitles, or even thinking in your new language. And that's awesome. Goals are great. But here's the thing. Fluency is not a destination, it's a journey. And on this journey, it's the small wins that count. For example, let's say you learn how to introduce yourself. Hi, my name is your name. That's a win. Or maybe you can order coffee in Italian. Un caffè per favor. Boom, another win. Celebrate those moments. They're proof you're making progress. Step 3. Make it personal. This is a big one. If your language learning feels like a chore, you're not going to stick with it. Period. That's why you need to make it personal. Think about your why. Why do you want to learn this language? Is it for travel? To connect with family? Maybe you're obsessed with K-dramas or Spanish music. Whatever it is, let that passion drive you. And don't stop there. Find ways to bring the language into your life. Love cooking? Watch recipe videos in your target language. Into fitness? Follow workout instructors who speak it. The more you connect the language to things you already love, the more fun and natural it'll feel. Step 4. Consistency beats intensity. I can't stress this enough. It's better to study for 10 minutes every day than for 2 hours once a week. Why? Because your brain learns best through repetition. Think of it like watering a plant. You don't dump a bucket of water on it once a week and hope it thrives, right? You give it a little bit every day. Your language skills are the same. So, set a goal that feels doable for you. Maybe it's practicing 5 new words a day, or listening to a podcast while you cook dinner. Start small and build from there. Step 5. Find your tribe. Learning a language can feel lonely sometimes, especially if you don't know anyone else who's on the same path. But here's the good news. There's a massive community out there waiting for you. Join a language exchange group, hop into an online forum, or find a buddy who's learning the same language. Sharing your struggles and wins with others can keep you motivated and make the process way more fun. Alright, let's recap. Today, we talked about the mindset you need to start strong. Embrace mistakes. Celebrate small wins. Make it personal. Stay consistent. Find your tribe. And remember, learning a language isn't a race. It's a process. Some days you'll feel like a rock star, and other days you might feel stuck. That's normal. Just keep showing up, and I promise you'll get there. Alright, that's it for today's episode of Fluency First Steps. I hope you're feeling inspired to start, or restart, your language learning journey. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's also dreaming of learning a new language. Next week, we're diving into my favorite tools and resources for beginners, so you don't want to miss that. Until then, keep practicing, keep smiling, and remember, you've got this. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or ideas for the next episodes. Here's what's fascinating about these memory networks. When someone tells you they love hiking in Colorado, your brain might connect it to the visual image of mountains, your own experiences with hiking, the color of their outdoor gear they're wearing, the enthusiasm in their voice when they talked about it. Any friends you have in Colorado, it's like your brain is creating a whole movie around this one piece of information. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to remember everything. And let me tell you, that's a recipe for remembering nothing. Instead, I'm going to teach you what I call the connection constellation method. Imagine each person you meet has their own constellation of key details. Just like real constellations, you don't need to remember every star, just the bright ones that form a recognizable pattern. Let me break this down into practical steps. 1. The anchor detail. First, find what I call an anchor detail, something unique or passionate about the person. Maybe they're a dedicated marathon runner, or they have an unusual hobby like collecting vintage typewriters. This becomes your North Star in their constellation. 2. The story connection. Next, connect that anchor to a mini-story. If they're a marathon runner, imagine them running past all their other life details, their job as a teacher, their 2 kids, their love of Italian cooking. The more vivid and even ridiculous the story, the better. Let me share a technique I use that's been absolutely game-changing. I call it the 3-layer deep method. When someone shares something, ask a question that goes 1 layer deeper, then another. By the 3rd layer, you've usually hit something meaningful and memorable. For example, they mention they like coffee. You ask about their favorite coffee shop. They share how that coffee shop is where they wrote their first novel. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Our brains are actually better at remembering information that has emotional content. That's why you might forget what you had for lunch 3 days ago, but you perfectly remember the story of how your friend met their partner. Let me introduce you to what psychologists call emotional bookmarking. When someone shares something that has emotional weight, whether it's joy, excitement, concern, or pride, your brain automatically flags it as important. It's like your brain's way of saying, hey, pay attention to this part. But here's the really cool part. You can actually train your brain to create these emotional bookmarks intentionally. Here's how. 1. The empathy echo. When someone shares something, take a moment to imagine how they feel about it. Are they excited? Worried? Proud? This emotional mirroring helps cement the memory. 2. The personal bridge. Find a way to connect their experience to something in your own life. But, and this is crucial, don't hijack the conversation to talk about yourself. Just create that silent bridge in your mind. Let's talk about something that's revolutionized my own approach to remembering details, what I call the context mapping technique. Your brain remembers things better when they're tied to a specific context or a location. Here's how it works. When you're talking to someone, make mental notes of where you are, what the environment looks like, what you're doing, any unique circumstances of the meeting. Later, when you want to recall details about them, start by remembering the context first. It's like pulling on one end of a string and watching the whole memory unravel. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, technology. Should you be taking notes on your phone about people you meet? Well, I've got a nuanced take on this. I call it the digital memory assistant approach. Use technology for important dates, birthdays, anniversaries, names of spouse and children, professional details, specific interests or hobbies. But rely on your organic memory for emotional connections, personal stories, shared experiences, recent updates. Remember, the goal isn't to become a human database, it's to create meaningful connections. Think of these memory techniques as tools for building bridges, not filing cabinets. Let me share one last story that really brings this home. Last year, I met someone at a conference who remembered not just my name, but a detail I'd mentioned in passing about my grandmother's recipes. A year later, they asked me if I'd ever tried making her famous lasagna. That small detail made such an impact that we're now close friends. As we wrap up today's episode, remember this. Every detail you remember about someone is like a little gift you can give them later. It says, I heard you. What you shared mattered to me. And in our fast-paced, often impersonal world, that's something truly special. That's all for today's exploration of personal memory mastery. If you've got any special techniques for remembering details about people or stories about meaningful connections, share them in the comments or on our social media. Until next time, keep listening, keep connecting, and keep making people feel remembered. This is your Memory Master, signing off. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next week for more adventures in understanding how our minds create meaningful connections. The tools you need to start learning a language. Hey. Welcome back to Fluency First Steps, the podcast where we make language learning simple, fun, and totally doable. I'm your host, Ashley, and I am so pumped you're here for episode 2. Last time, we talked about mindset, why it's so important to embrace mistakes, celebrate small wins, and keep it personal. If you missed that episode, I highly recommend you go back and check it out because mindset really sets the foundation for everything else. Today, we're getting practical. We're diving into tools and resources, the essentials you need to kickstart your language learning journey and actually enjoy the process. I'll share some of my favorite apps, websites, and methods, plus a few unexpected tips that might surprise you. So, grab a coffee, tea, or whatever fuels your brain, and let's get into it. Step 1. Pick the right apps. Okay, let's start with the obvious one, apps. These days, there are so many language learning apps out there, and some of them are seriously amazing. My personal favorites? Let's break it down. 1. Duolingo. You've probably heard of this one, and for good reason. It's gamified, easy to use, and perfect for beginners. Plus, those little green owl reminders are very motivating. 2. Memrise. This one focuses on real-life phrases and includes videos of native speakers. It's great if you want to sound natural from the start. 3. Anki. If you're serious about memorizing vocabulary, Anki is a must. It's a flashcard app that uses spaced repetition, which basically means it helps you remember words just before you're about to forget them. Pro tip: don't download every app at once. Pick 1 or 2, test them out, and see what clicks for you. Step 2. Leverage YouTube. YouTube is like a gold mine for language learners. Seriously, there's something for everyone. You can find tutorials, pronunciation guides, grammar lessons, you name it. For beginners, I recommend searching for channels specifically geared toward your target language. For example, if you're learning French, look for French for Beginners. And don't be afraid to explore cultural content too, like vlogs or cooking videos in your target language. It's a fun way to immerse yourself without feeling like you're studying. Step 3. Podcasts and audiobooks. Since you're already listening to a podcast, why not add some language learning podcasts to your rotation? Here are a couple of my go-tos. Coffee Break Languages. They have bite-sized lessons in multiple languages. Learn Language with Host. Just search for your target language and you'll find plenty of options. And audiobooks? Total game changer. Start with children's books or beginner-level stories. Many platforms like Audible have foreign language sections. Step 4. Get a good dictionary or translation tool. If you're not already using Google Translate, it's a handy tool to have in your pocket. But here's a tip. Don't rely on it for everything. Instead, use it alongside a proper dictionary app like Word Reference or Lingi, which give you more context for how words are actually used. Step 5. Immerse without leaving home. Now, let's talk immersion. A lot of people think you have to move to another country to immerse yourself in a language, but that's not true. You can create an immersive environment right where you are. Here's how. Change the language settings on your phone. Follow influencers or creators who speak your target language on Instagram or TikTok. Watch your favorite TV shows with subtitles in your target language. Or, if you're feeling bold, turn off the subtitles altogether. It's these little daily touches that make a big difference over time. Step 6. Find a speaking partner. All right, this one is huge. Language is all about communication, so you need to practice speaking. But don't panic. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect right away. There are tons of ways to find speaking partners. Apps like Tandem or HelloTalk connect you with native speakers. Join a local language exchange group or an online meetup. Hire a tutor on platforms like italki or Preply. And remember, your goal isn't to sound like a native from day one. Your goal is to communicate. Step 7. Keep it fun. This is probably the most important step of all. If learning feels like a chore, you're going to quit. Period. So, find ways to make it enjoyable. Love music? Create a playlist in your target language and sing along. Obsessed with memes? Follow pages that post them in your new language. Love cooking? Try recipes written in your target language. The point is, the more you enjoy the process, the more you'll stick with it. All right, let's do a quick recap of today's episode. We talked about tools and resources to get you started. Choose the right apps. Use YouTube for lessons and culture. Listen to podcasts and audiobooks. Get a good dictionary or translation tool. Create immersion at home. Find a speaking partner. And, most importantly, keep it fun. So, that's it for episode 2 of Fluency First Steps. I hope you're feeling equipped and excited to try out some of these tools. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. It really helps. Next week, we're diving into how to build a consistent language learning routine that actually works for your busy life. Until then, I'm Ashley, and remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep going, you've got this. Podcast Episode 3: Building a Consistent Language Learning Routine. Hey there, and welcome back to Fluency First Steps, the podcast where we make language learning simple, fun, and totally part of your everyday life. I'm Ashley, your host, and as always, I'm so excited you're here. In the last episode, we talked about tools and resources, apps, podcasts, YouTube, and even using your favorite hobbies to immerse yourself in a new language. If you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend you check it out. But today we're diving into something that can make or break your language learning journey: consistency. You've probably heard this before. Consistency is key. But let me tell you, it's not just a cliche. It's the golden rule for learning a language. The good news is that being consistent doesn't mean spending hours every day studying grammar. It's more about finding small, sustainable ways to fit language learning into your daily life. So, let's break it down. I'm going to share practical tips to help you create a routine that works for you. Step 1. Start small and build momentum. All right, let's get real for a second. When you first start learning a language, it's easy to feel super motivated. You might think, I'm going to study for 2 hours every day. But, spoiler alert, that's a recipe for burnout. Instead, start small. Commit to 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's it. Here's the thing. What matters is consistency, not intensity. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't brush for 2 hours once a week, right? You do it for a few minutes every day. Language learning works the same way. For example, you could learn 5 new words each day. Spend 10 minutes on an app like Duolingo or Memrise. Listen to a short podcast while you're getting ready in the morning. These little actions might not feel like much, but over time, they add up. Step 2. Tie learning to your existing routine. Now, one of the easiest ways to stick with something is to attach it to habits you already have. This is called habit stacking, and it's a game changer. Here's what I mean. Do you have coffee every morning? Spend that time reviewing vocabulary. Commute to work or school. Listen to a podcast or audiobook in your target language. Go for a walk or hit the gym. Play music or a YouTube video in your new language. When you pair language learning with things you're already doing, it feels effortless. Step 3. Create a study space. Okay, let's talk environment. If you have a dedicated space for studying, whether it's a corner of your desk, your favorite chair, or even just your phone screen, it can make a big difference. Here's the key. Make it inviting. If you're using physical materials like notebooks or flashcards, keep them neat and easy to access. If you're using apps, organize your phone screen so your language tools are front and center. Bonus tip: add something fun to your space, like a map of the country where your target language is spoken or a picture of your dream travel destination. It's a little reminder of why you're doing this. Step 4. Plan ahead. I get it. Life gets busy. That's why planning is so important. Take a few minutes at the start of each week to decide when and how you'll study. For example, Monday, 10 minutes of Duolingo. Tuesday, watch a YouTube video in your target language. On Wednesday, review flashcards. Thursday, practice speaking with a language partner or tutor. Friday, listen to a podcast. The point isn't to overwhelm yourself, it's to create a loose structure so you don't have to make decisions in the moment. Step 5. Track your progress. One of the most motivating things you can do is track your progress. When you see how far you've come, it keeps you going. Here are some easy ways to track your learning. Keep a notebook where you write down new words or phrases. Use an app that tracks your streaks or milestones. Record yourself speaking the language every few weeks and listen back to hear your improvement. Even if you don't feel like you're progressing, trust me, you are. Having something tangible to look back on will remind you of that. Step 6. Be flexible and kind to yourself. Look, nobody's perfect. There will be days when you don't feel like studying or when life gets in the way. And that's okay. Missing a day or even a week doesn't mean you've failed. The key is to get back on track without beating yourself up. Language learning is a long game. Progress isn't about never messing up. It's about showing up as often as you can. Pause for a breath. All right, let's recap. Start small and focus on consistency. Tie language learning to your existing habits. Create a study space you love. Plan your week ahead of time. Track your progress to stay motivated. And most importantly, be flexible and kind to yourself. If you take anything from today's episode, let it be this. Language learning doesn't have to take over your life. A little bit every day is enough to make amazing progress. That's it for episode 3 of Fluency First Steps. I hope you're feeling inspired to build a routine that works for you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps so much. Next week, we're tackling a big one: how to practice speaking even if you're shy or feel awkward. You won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Ashley, and remember, the key to fluency is consistency. You've got this. Let me know if you'd like to refine anything or jump to the next episode. Podcast Episode 4: Overcoming Shyness. How to practice speaking your new language. Hey. Welcome back to Fluency First Steps, where we make language learning simple, fun, and totally achievable. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'm so excited you're here with me today. So, quick question. Have you ever found yourself wanting to speak in your new language, but freezing up the second you have the chance? Maybe you're worried you'll say the wrong thing or sound silly. Trust me, you're not alone. One of the biggest hurdles language learners face is the fear of speaking. But here's the thing. Speaking is the most important skill to practice if you want to reach fluency. And guess what? It doesn't have to be scary. In today's episode, I'm going to share strategies to help you overcome that shyness and start practicing speaking with confidence, even if you're feeling totally awkward about it right now. Let's dive in. Step 1. Start small and talk to yourself. All right, here's the easiest way to practice speaking without the pressure of a real conversation. talk to yourself. I know it might sound a little weird, but hear me out. You can do this anytime, anywhere. Narrate what you're doing, like, I am making coffee or I am walking to the store. Or describe things around you. The sky is blue or this chair is red. The point is to get comfortable forming sentences out loud, even if nobody's listening. Plus, talking to yourself is a safe space to make mistakes. And yes, mistakes are totally fine. Bonus tip: try this while looking in a mirror. It might feel silly at first, but it helps you get used to the sound of your own voice in your target language. Step 2. Use scripts for common scenarios. One thing that makes speaking nerve-wracking is not knowing what to say. That's where scripts come in handy. Think about situations where you need to speak your target language, like ordering food, introducing yourself, or asking for directions. Write out a simple script for each scenario and practice saying it out loud. For example, if you're learning Spanish, you could practice. Hola, me llamo Ashley. ¿Cómo estás? Hi, my name is Ashley. How are you? Quiero un café, por favor. I want a coffee, please. The more you practice these scripts, the more natural they'll feel. And when the moment comes to use them in real life, you'll already have the words ready to go. Step 3. Record yourself. Okay, this one can feel a little intimidating, but it's super effective. Record yourself speaking. Pick a simple topic, like introducing yourself, describing your day, or talking about your favorite hobby, and record yourself speaking about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Then listen back. Here's the thing, the first few times you do this, you might cringe a little. That's totally normal. But over time, you'll start to notice improvements in your pronunciation and fluency. Plus, it's a great way to track your progress. Step 4. Find low-stakes speaking opportunities. Now, let's talk about real conversations. If the thought of speaking to a fluent speaker makes you break out in a cold sweat, start with low-stakes opportunities. Here are a few ideas. Join a beginner-friendly language exchange group where everyone is still learning. Practice with other learners who are at your level. Use apps like Tandem or HelloTalk, where you can chat with native speakers who are super patient and helpful. Remember, the people you're practicing with aren't expecting perfection. They're there to help and encourage you. Step 5. Embrace the awkwardness. Let's be real. Speaking a new language is going to feel awkward at times. You'll mix up words, forget phrases, and maybe even say something completely wrong. And you know what? That's okay. In fact, those moments are opportunities to learn. One time, I accidentally told someone in French that I wanted to eat at a table instead of sit at a table. We both laughed about it, and guess what? I'll never forget the difference between manger, to eat, and accessoire, to sit again. The point is, awkwardness is part of the process. Don't let it hold you back. Step 6. Celebrate small wins. Finally, remember to celebrate every little step forward. Maybe you introduced yourself to someone in your target language. Maybe you ordered a meal while traveling. Or maybe you just said one sentence out loud, without freezing up. Those are all wins, and they deserve to be celebrated. Progress doesn't happen overnight, but every small step gets you closer to your goal. All right, let's recap what we covered today. Start by talking to yourself. It's a low-pressure way to practice. Use scripts to prepare for common scenarios. Record yourself to track your progress and build confidence. Find low-stakes opportunities to practice with others. Embrace the awkwardness. It's part of the process. And don't forget to celebrate every small win. That's it for episode 4 of Fluency First Steps. I hope you're feeling inspired to get out there and start speaking no matter how shy or awkward you feel. Remember, the only way to get better is to try. Next week, we'll be talking about how to build your vocabulary fast and make it stick. You won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Ashley, and as always, you've got this. Let me know if you'd like me to continue or adjust anything. Podcast Episode 5: How to Build Your Vocabulary Fast and Make It Stick. Hey. Welcome back to Fluency First Steps, where we make language learning fun, simple, and totally doable. I'm Ashley, your host, and I am so excited to dive into today's episode because it's all about one of the biggest building blocks of fluency: vocabulary. Let me ask you something. Have you ever learned a new word and then completely forgotten it the next day? Or maybe you feel like you know a ton of words, but they vanish the moment you actually need them? Yet you're not alone. Vocabulary can feel tricky, but the good news is that with the right strategies, you can grow your word bank fast and actually remember what you learn. So, today I'm sharing my favorite tips to help you build vocabulary efficiently and, most importantly, make it stick. Let's get into it. Step 1. Learn words that matter to you. Here's the deal. Not all vocabulary is created equal. If you're learning words you'll never actually use, it's no wonder they're hard to remember. Instead, focus on high-frequency words and words relevant to your life. Start with basics you'll need in everyday conversations, like greetings, numbers, days of the week, and common verbs. Then think about your interests. If you love cooking, learn food-related words. If you're into sports, pick up vocabulary about your favorite game. When you learn words that matter to you, they'll stick because you're more likely to use them. Step 2. Use the power of context. Memorizing words in isolation is tough. Instead, learn them in context. That means focusing on phrases and sentences rather than just individual words. For example, instead of memorizing the word apple, learn how to use it in a sentence. I'm eating an apple. If you're learning Spanish, it could be Estoy comiendo una manzana. This way, you're not just learning a word, you're learning how it works in real-life situations. Apps like Memrise and Closemaster are great for this because they teach words and phrases. Or you can create your own sentences using the words you're learning. Step 3. Practice spaced repetition. Alright, here's some science for you. Studies show that spaced repetition is one of the most effective ways to memorize and retain vocabulary. It's a technique where you review words at increasing intervals, right before you're about to forget them. The easiest way to do this? Use a flashcard app like Anki or Quizlet. These apps are designed for spaced repetition, so they'll remind you to review words at just the right time. And don't worry, you don't need to spend hours making flashcards. Many of these apps have pre-made decks for specific languages, so you can dive right in. Step 4. Make it multisensory. Here's a fun one. The more senses you involve in your learning, the better you'll remember. So, don't just read new words. Try listening to them, speaking them out loud, and even writing them down. For example, I'll listen to how a word is pronounced using a dictionary app or YouTube. Speak the word out loud and practice using it in a sentence. Write it down multiple times in a notebook. If you're a visual learner, try associating words with pictures or creating mind maps. And if you're into music, add songs in your target language to your playlist and sing along. Step 5. Play with words. Learning doesn't have to be boring. You can make vocabulary practice fun by turning it into a game. Here are a few ideas. Use apps like Duolingo or Babbel for gamified learning. Play word association games, like thinking of as many related words as you can in your target language. Try crossword puzzles, word searches, or Scrabble in your target language. When you're having fun, you're way more likely to stick with it. Step 6. Immerse yourself in the language. One of the best ways to learn vocabulary naturally is through immersion. Even if you're not living in a country where the language is spoken, you can create immersion at home. Here's how. Watch TV shows or movies in your target language with subtitles. Read books, articles, or even Instagram captions in your new language. Follow native speakers on social media and pay attention to the phrases they use. The more you're exposed to the language, the more words you'll pick up, almost without realizing it. Step 7. Don't stress about perfection. Finally, let's talk about something important. You don't need to know every single word in your target language to be fluent. Focus on learning the most important and commonly used words first. It's also totally okay to forget words sometimes. That's part of the process. The more you practice, the easier it'll get to recall them when you need them. All right, let's do a quick recap of today's tips for building your vocabulary fast. 1. Learn words that matter to you. 2. Use context. Focus on phrases and sentences. 3. Practice spaced repetition with tools like Anki or Quizlet. 4. Make it multisensory. Listen, speak, and write the words. 5. Play games to make learning fun. 6. Immerse yourself in the language with shows, books, and social media. 7. And most importantly, don't stress about perfection. With these strategies, you'll not only grow your vocabulary faster, but also actually remember the words when it counts. That's it for episode 5 of Fluency First Steps. I hope you're feeling pumped to start building your word bank and making it stick. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the show. Next week, we'll be talking about how to stay motivated when the excitement of learning starts to fade. Trust me, we all go through it, and I've got some great tips to keep you on track. Until then, I'm Ashley, and remember, every word you learn is a step closer to fluency. You've got this. Let me know if you want me to keep going. Podcast Episode 6. Staying Motivated When the Excitement Fades. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Fluency First Steps, your go-to podcast for making language learning simple, fun, and, most importantly, sustainable. I'm Ashley, your host, and today, we're tackling a topic that every single language learner faces at some point: losing motivation. Let's be real for a second. At the beginning of your language learning journey, everything feels new and exciting. You're downloading apps, learning your first words, and imagining all the amazing things you'll do when you're fluent. But then a life happens. The honeymoon phase ends, and suddenly, it feels harder to keep going. If you've been feeling stuck or unmotivated, trust me, you're not alone. The good news? There are plenty of ways to reignite that spark and keep moving forward, even when the initial excitement fades. Today, I'm sharing my favorite strategies to help you stay motivated, stay consistent, and actually enjoy the process. Let's jump in. Step 1. Reconnect with your why. All right, let's start with the most important question. Why are you learning this language? Maybe you want to travel and connect with locals. Maybe you're studying for work or school. Or maybe you just love the culture and want to dive deeper into it. Whatever your reason is, take some time to reflect on it. Write it down if you need to. When motivation starts to fade, reconnecting with your why can remind you of the bigger picture. One thing I love to do is visualize the moment I'll use my new language in real life, like ordering food at a cafe in Paris or chatting with a new friend in Spanish. It's such a powerful motivator. Step 2. Set small, achievable goals. Here's the thing. Big goals like become fluent can feel overwhelming. Instead, focus on small, specific goals that are within reach. For example, I'll learn 10 new words this week. Watch one YouTube video in your target language. Practice speaking for 5 minutes a day. These bite-sized goals are easier to achieve, and every little win gives you a boost of motivation to keep going. Step 3. Celebrate your progress. Speaking of wins, let's talk about celebrating. It's so easy to focus on how far you still have to go and forget to acknowledge how far you've already come. Take a moment to think about what you've achieved so far. Maybe you've learned how to introduce yourself, read a menu, or even just say hello and thank you with confidence. That's progress, and it's worth celebrating. Treat yourself when you hit a milestone, Whether it's a small reward like a piece of chocolate or something bigger like a new book or app subscription, you've earned it. Step 4. Mix things up. If you're feeling stuck in a rut, it might be time to change up your routine. Doing the same thing over and over can get boring, so try something new to keep things fresh and exciting. Here are a few ideas. Switch to a different app or resource for a week. Watch a TV show or movie in your target language. Try journaling in your new language, even if it's just a sentence or two. Explore music, podcasts, or TikTok creators who speak the language. The key is to find ways to make learning feel fun again. Step 5. Surround yourself with positivity. Let's talk about your environment for a second. Are you surrounding yourself with things that inspire you to learn? One way to stay motivated is to fill your life with reminders of your language learning journey. For example, follow social media accounts that share tips or inspirational stories about learning your language. Put up photos of the country or culture you're learning about. Change your phone's language settings or label items around your house with sticky notes. These little reminders can keep your goal top of mind and make you excited to keep going. Step 6. Find a community. Learning a language can feel lonely if you're doing it all by yourself. That's why finding a community can make such a big difference. Join a language exchange group, sign up for an online class, or connect with other learners on apps like Tandem or HelloTalk. Sharing your progress, struggles, and wins with others can keep you motivated, and it's a great way to practice. Step 7. Be kind to yourself. Lastly, let's talk about mindset. Learning a language is a journey, and it's not always a straight line. There will be ups and downs, and that's okay. The important thing is to give yourself grace and keep going. If you miss a day, or even a week, don't beat yourself up. Progress isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up as often as you can and keeping your eye on the long-term goal. All right, let's recap today's tips for staying motivated. 1. Reconnect with your why. Remember why you started. 2. Set small, achievable goals to keep moving forward. 3. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small it feels. 4. Mix up your routine to keep things fresh. 5. Surround yourself with positive reminders of your journey. 6. Find a community to support and encourage you. 7. Be kind to yourself. It's okay to have ups and downs. Motivation might come and go, but if you keep showing up, you'll get there. That's it for episode 6 of Fluency First Steps. I hope today's episode gave you the boost you needed to keep going strong. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It means so much to me. Next week, we're diving into a super fun topic: how to sound more like a native speaker, even if you're a total beginner. I'll share tips on pronunciation, slang, and more, so stay tuned. Until next time, I'm Ashley, and as always, you've got this. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next episode or tweak anything. Podcast Episode 7. Sounding like a native speaker, even as a beginner. Hey, everyone! Welcome back to Fluency First Steps, where we're all about making language learning simple, fun, and, let's be honest, totally awesome. I'm Ashley, your host, and I'm so glad you're here because today's episode is one of my favorites. We're talking about how to sound more like a native speaker, even if you're just starting out. Now, before we dive in, let me say this. You don't need to sound exactly like a native speaker to communicate effectively. But working on your pronunciation, rhythm, and even a little slang can boost your confidence and make your conversations flow so much smoother. So, if you've ever felt like your accent or word choices make you stick out like a sore thumb, don't worry, I've got you. Let's break down some simple strategies to help you sound more natural in your new language. Step 1. Listen like a detective. The first step to sounding more like a native speaker? Listen. And I mean really listen. Pay close attention to how native speakers pronounce words, the rhythm of their sentences, and even the way their voices rise and fall. Here are a few ways to train your ear. Watch movies, TV shows, or YouTube videos in your target language. Listen to podcasts or audiobooks spoken by native speakers. Try shadowing. This is where you listen to a sentence and repeat it immediately, mimicking the speaker's tone and intonation as closely as possible. It might feel awkward at first, but trust me, shadowing is a game changer for improving your pronunciation and rhythm. Step 2. Focus on the most common sounds. Every language has sounds that might be tricky for non-native speakers. Instead of stressing about every single word, focus on mastering the most common sounds in your target language. For example, if you're learning Spanish, pay attention to the rolled R and the soft LL sound. In French, practice nasal vowels like on and. For English learners, the TH sound is a big one. Once you nail these core sounds, your speech will instantly sound more natural. Pro tip: use a pronunciation app like Speechling or Forvo to hear how native speakers pronounce tricky words. You can even record yourself and compare your pronunciation to theirs. Step 3. Slow down. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is trying to speak too quickly. I get it, you want to keep up with native speakers. But rushing often leads to mispronunciation and frustration. Instead, focus on speaking slowly and clearly. Native speakers will appreciate the effort, and you'll have more time to think about your pronunciation and word choice. Over time, as you get more comfortable, your speed will naturally improve. Step 4. Learn the rhythm of the language. Every language has its own rhythm and flow. For example, English has a stress-timed rhythm, where certain words in a sentence are emphasized, while Spanish is syllable-timed, meaning every syllable gets equal weight. To sound more like a native, try to mimic the natural rhythm of the language. A great way to practice this is by listening to music in your target language and singing along. Songs are amazing for picking up on rhythm, stress, and even slang. Step 5. Sprinkle in some slang. Speaking of slang, let's talk about how to make your conversations sound more natural. Slang and informal expressions can make a huge difference when it comes to sounding like a native speaker. Here's how to learn slang. Follow native speakers on social media and pay attention to the phrases they use. Watch TV shows or YouTube videos where people speak casually, like vlogs or reality shows. Use apps like Hi Native to ask native speakers about common slang terms. Just a heads up, be careful about using slang in formal situations. But for casual conversations, a little slang can go a long way in helping you sound more authentic. Step 6. Practice, practice, practice. Alright, let's get real for a second. The only way to truly sound like a native speaker is to practice a lot. But here's the good news. You don't need to practice with a native speaker all the time. Here are a few practice ideas. Use a voice recording app to practice speaking and play it back to check your pronunciation. Try talking to yourself in your target language. Describe what you're doing or how you're feeling. Join a language exchange or online community to practice with real people. The more you practice, the more natural your speech will become. Step 7. Embrace your unique accent. Here's the thing I really want you to remember. You don't have to completely erase your accent to communicate well or sound natural. Your accent is part of who you are, and it shows that you've put in the effort to learn a new language. Focus on being clear and confident, rather than trying to sound perfect. Native speakers will appreciate your effort no matter what, and over time, your pronunciation will improve naturally. Alright, let's recap today's tips for sounding more like a native speaker. 1. Listen closely to native speakers and mimic their pronunciation and intonation. 2. Focus on mastering the most common sounds in your target language. 3. Slow down and prioritize clarity over speed. 4. Learn the rhythm and flow of the language by listening to music or practicing shadowing. 5. Sprinkle in some slang to make your conversations more natural. 6. Practice as much as you can, even if it's just with yourself. 7. Embrace your accent. It's part of your unique language journey. That's it for episode 7 of Fluency First Steps. I hope today's tips give you the confidence to speak with a little more flair in your target language. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. Next week, we'll dive into a super practical topic: how to make the most of just 15 minutes a day for language learning. If you've ever felt like you don't have enough time to study, this episode is for you. Until then, I'm Ashley, and as always, you've got this. Let me know if you'd like to keep going or adjust anything.